Hello everybody and welcome back to our Unreal Engine 4 and Playfab series. In this episode we're going to be looking into experiments, also known more commonly as A/B testing, and we're also going to be looking into the data and dashboard side of things, so basically everything that falls under this analysis section of Playfab. Apologies if my audio sounds a bit different than normal. I have recently swapped out my microphone, but it seems to be working fine, so let's start. So, experiments and A/B testing, what you need to know. They are more commonly referred to as A/B testing, and this is because it's basically a way to test different values of data for the same thing. What I mean by this is if you have something in your game, say, I don't know, something that's not going to really impact game data. This is probably more for mobile than it is for PC, but if you have something in your game that isn't really going to affect like an actual, like, you know, somebody's got a better chance of winning because of their data than another person. Say, like, I don't know, a chest, maybe chest opening time, like a reward opening time. If you want to test whether it's better to have something at different hour lengths, so if you have, say if you just have one chest in your game and you want to check to see if it's better to have 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, or 8 hours for it to open up and reward the player. Now, instead of creating loads of different things for this, like loads of different title datas or different values of data just in order to do this one thing, what you can do something is called A/B testing. And what it does is basically every time the player becomes part of the game via the title added or the experiment begins, everybody in the game is assigned to a random group. Now, depending on how many tests you're running, so as in if you've got 4 different variables that you're testing, as what I mean by this is, you know, if you've got that chest example, you've got 4 different times that you're testing 2, 4, 6 and 8 hours. Everybody will be assigned to one of those groups, and then that is what the game will read for them. Now, with experiments, you probably want some way to respond to, to look into how the player is dealing with whatever it is that you're testing. So, with chest opening times, you probably want to see if players are opening more chests or if they're just not bothering. Like, say like 8 hours, some people might not even bother because it's so long a period of time. But then with 2 hours, you might see like a big increase because obviously they can open them a lot quicker. So you probably want some way to read back the data that you're receiving, and then when the test is over, you simply set the winner, and then everybody defaults to that winner. That's the easiest example that I can give. So everybody is randomly assigned a different value to whatever it is that you're testing. When the testing finishes, you can have a look at all the data and stuff, and then you decide the winner, and everybody then gets set to that winner's value. That's basically the gist of it. Again, this is probably something you more likely see on mobile games where it's more non-gameplay affecting. They test different values in order to make sure that the player interaction is good, or that the player returning to the game is good, with stuff like daily rewards or reward chests and all that sort of stuff. You don't normally see it on PC games because a lot of PC games and console games are more like shooters and stuff, and there isn't really anything that you could do. Plus, as well, PC games don't really have the systems that mobile games have, in the sense of things that take X amount of hours to open up and stuff like that, simply because players on PC aren't going to do that. So there are different things. I mean, you could test a couple of things, especially in the early stages of your game. You could do this for a few things, say like if you're making a card game, say with things like turn timers. And what I mean by this is, if you want the initial to be, I don't know, 1.5 minutes, you could test 1 minute and 2 minutes as well to see how your players gauge with it. However, again, because this is something that affects both players of that match, then, you know, players are going to start seeing different values depending on who they're matched up against. So it's usually better to keep A/B testing specific to player values that no other player is ever going to see or deal with. So again, this is more likely to be used on mobile for things like the chess stuff. However, I'm sure that some of you could probably think of a couple of reasons or a couple of examples that you want to do on PC in order to test this. However, if you're going to do it, probably do it in the early stages rather than the later stages side of things. And don't tell anyone that you're doing it, especially if it's something that actually affects different systems. You probably want to keep A/B testing and experiment side of things like very close to the company. You don't want to tell people that you're doing them, because especially if it's something that that you can do money wise. I've seen it being used before on iApps. If you don't, if you don't want people to find out about this, then don't tell anyone, because if they find out that they've paid a different value of money for something and someone else has paid less, obviously it's going to cause massive issues. So whilst it's good for you to find out what people are buying something at, and it gives feedback to you guys, you probably don't want to tell the players that you're actually doing that. So try and keep everything secret that you do on here between the company. A little bit further in this episode, we are going to be looking into the A/B testing, but first off, I just want to go over some of the other things that we have here. So experiments is obviously the place where A/B testing now happens. It used to be done inside of automation, but now experiments has its own little tab. So if you've got any in here, they can still be run from in here, but you should probably switch over to the experiments tab just because it's a little bit more detailed and better off. The other two things that we're going to look into is the dashboards and the data. So when you set up Playfab, it automatically has these three things active, and it tracks everything that happens. Obviously, whenever you start your game, you're most likely going to come to this title overview inside of Playfab, and you're going to see these things. Now, these obviously are just, unique users, which show you new users and things, and logins, purchases, cloud scripts, API calls, and reports. But if you want to go into more detail of stuff, you can do. The dashboards is basically trends. It is currently in preview, but it seems to be going well, so I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out of preview soon. It's also been in preview for a bit. But you can see here a little bit more detailed of things, so like 7-day trends, so it shows you active players and new players, screen time, so how long certain users are on, are playing the game for, new user retention, and transaction revenue. These sort of things are interesting once the game is actually released. It is interesting to look at them whilst you're testing. However, obviously with testers, it can sometimes act up a little bit with like money values, especially if you're testing with the Steam sandbox purchasing on, which basically allows you to make free purchases. This can really screw up this, because obviously Playfab is reading it as you actually spent the money, rather than it saying, oh, actually you had the sandbox thing on, so it's nothing. So it can sometimes act up a little bit, but it is good to look over these details and make sure that you understand what's going on here. Transaction revenue, obviously that's pretty obvious, but the new user retention means that the player is coming back to the game. This is something that you want to try and keep as high as possible when you're looking in. When the game is actually released and you're looking into what you can do to get the players to come back to the game, you want to see what your retention's like. Obviously, screen time, depending on the type of game, if you've got a shooter or something like that, people might pop in for just an hour or so, but then if you've got like a really complex single-player game, they might spend hours on it. So it all depends on the type of game. Obviously, new players and active players, this just depends on how many players you've actually got on, according to your Playfab, that are actually playing the game. And you can just look over this stuff quite genuinely. It's like a today versus 7 days ago, so it actually looks at the last 7 days. So it is pretty detailed. If if once your game's out, you want to have a weekly report of what's going on, and you can actually look at just reports themselves that are generated automatically by Playfab. This is pretty handy, these reports. So it'll automatically generate things like rolling 30-day overview, 30-day retention. Let's see what else we got here. 30-day totals. Then there's probably some daily ones somewhere. Daily totals, daily overviews, and a few others as well. There's also, when you start to get money sort of stuff, it starts to give you money values, like daily spends, daily purchases, what was popular, what isn't, what's been bought more, what's been sold less. There's also, at the bottom here, you've got API usage details and all this sort of stuff, and Playfab automatically generates these for you, which is great. And you can also, you can search by exactly what you want to look for. I was just trying to remember some of them off the top of my head, because I have seen a few of them, and there is quite a few here. But what you can basically do is just simply download the CSV and open it, and it will show you all of the detail for whatever it is that the report is showing you. So you can see here that this one is for rolling 30-day overview. So it tells us the title ID, which is obviously the title of your game, the timestamp, when it happened, total logins, unique players, revenue, purchases, total calls, total successful calls if there's been any errors, ARPU and ARPPU, these are to do with acquisition. This is, again, more further down the line that we will not be touching into because, you know, you have to have a finished project out there in order to really look at this sort of stuff. You can look into acquisition prices per person or per unit, as they prefer to them, but again, this is more like proper hardcore marketing when you start to actually market things on like videos of Facebook and YouTubes and things. We're not going to go into that. Average purchase price, so this depends on, you know, how many players and new users. So this is just one of them, and it automatically generates this for you, which is really, really handy because it just gives you that overview of to look at what is actually happening in your game. Now, with this one being a 30-day one, you can see here that it's only recorded, well, conveniently every 7 days, because obviously that's when I've been recording these videos for you guys. But if you had like say if you had quite a popular game, this would have every single day of that 30-day rollover included, and it would give you updates of everything that's on there. And obviously then you can have a sort of data analyzer person in your team who looks at this and goes, you know, oh, look at this on the Saturdays and Sundays, we're having a lot more players coming in. Let's do something for the weekdays to try and bring more players in. That sort of stuff, you know. This is sort of stuff that is end game stuff. It's not really development side of things that you guys are probably looking at whilst looking at these videos. This is for like end game side of things. Project done, getting ready for release, even game released, and then looking into what we can do to make the game better. So, you know, it's probably something that you guys are going to look into after that. But again, you have all of these reports that are already there for you to look at. You know, some of the top ones that you guys are probably going to want to look at are things like top daily items, daily, top spenders. Spenders one is obviously something that you really want to keep an eye on. You want to keep on top of your spenders in your game. You want to know who's spending the most money in your game. You want to make sure that, you know, things are done properly for them. You probably also, you know, after a certain limit, like, you know, some of these bigger games on mobiles, if you've got somebody spending like £500,000 on your game or something, you know, this is hypothetical, top a range up there, you know, you want to make sure that this guy's happy. You want to make sure that whatever he does is working fine. And if he's, say, like if he's grinding through your game and getting towards the top of the zones, make sure he's got content to play, because if he's got content to play, he's spending, and then obviously that's then better for you as well. So, you know, these are the sort of things that you guys need to keep not on top of, but you want to keep an eye on them. You want to keep an eye on what's happening in your game. You want to have someone looking over this data and making sure that everything's as it should be. Where can we improve? What's doing well? What's being bought? What isn't being bought? You know, there's no point having something in a store if it's never ever going to be bought, either because A, it's too expensive, or B, because nobody wants it. Now, obviously, with that, again, if you've got an item that you know isn't being bought because it's too expensive, experiment on it, create an A/B test, reduce the price, and see if people start to then buy it. If people then start to buy it at the reduced experiment cost, or at one of the experiment costs, depending on how many you do for it, set the value then to that. When the experiment finishes, go, okay, awesome, we know that people weren't buying it because it was too expensive, let's reduce the price of it. Boom, we're now making money off this product because people are buying it. Obviously, if nobody buys it still, then obviously there's something wrong with either the way it's being shown to the player or something that they don't want from the package that's obviously, or the item that's been sold. That then is a little bit different. You guys then need to figure out what's wrong with it. But if it's simply a cost thing, and if you reduce the cost via an experiment and you can instantly see that people are starting to buy it, then great, you figured out a problem, you're now making money off it, and you no longer have a dead item sitting in that store. So you've used the reports properly through the dashboards of Playfab, exactly what they're there for. You're reading the data, you're then creating an experiment for it, and you're fixing the problem, which is exactly what we're looking at right now. This is exactly what Playfab does great. You know, it automatically generates all these reports for you. It has all of these tables, all of these charts to show you exactly what is going on in your game. And that's great. But you guys need to be able to look at them, and you also need to keep on top of them. Because again, this can really help you with some of your stuff. Again, this is more for when your game is released rather than in the really early dev stages. Don't go experimenting stuff in the dev stages. It just won't work. You probably want to do that just within the engine and then see what happens later on down the line. This is more for when your game is actually out there and released to the public, and you can do stuff like this. You know, you have the player count to be able to test things happening in your game. So we've looked over a quick review of the reports here. As you can see, you've got a lot to do, and also as well you can look at your trends. If we now go to data, which is the other tab, you can see that this is a lot more than just dashboards. Dashboards is just a very simple thing. It just gives you the reports mainly. This is data that is being done through Playfab. Now this has a lot of stuff in it. You have the event history that we'll go into in a minute. Explorer, which is in its preview stage but is super powerful, and we'll go into it in a minute for you guys. Webhooks, now this is if you want to use external web services. I'm not going to look into this because obviously I'd have to set up some sort of external service that I'm not even going to pay for because obviously the game doesn't exist, so no point doing that. But there is a tutorial on it for you guys if you wish to look into it, and it goes into all the things that you need to do for this. It can be pretty handy if you want to keep hold of your data somewhere else. Event archive, now you can actually set up an S3 bucket in with your own AWS account, Amazon account, and you can archive all the data there. This is probably pretty good if you've got a game that has a lot of data being passed to and fro. You probably want to keep an eye on this, and if you're going to do so, all you need to do is go to update settings and then set up the stuff there. You have event export. Now this is just for storing stuff in your own cloud storage or long-term storage ingestion data platforms. Again, I'm not going to go into this, but it is possible to do so. So basically these last three here, the webhooks is external calls, but event archive and event export, this is basically if you want to keep the data or export the data as it happens to another service. So, that's just down to you guys. If you want to do this, great, but I think Playfab already handles this pretty well. If you want to archive it, that's probably pretty good, depending on how big your game is going to be. But this is more for you guys to decide to go down, and it's more of you've got to set stuff up externally, which obviously I'm not going to do. But if you know what you're doing with stuff like Amazon and the S3 bucket system, great, just shove all your data in there, then you'll have it archived. And the last one here is management. Now this is pretty new. I think this only came in a month or two ago. But basically, ignore this bit because obviously I haven't upgraded my account. But once you have upgraded your account so that you can have more than 100,000 users, and you get stuff like basically everything is listed here. So if you go to the upgrade account system, obviously you can see it here, and it used to be that you would like everything was different, like all the calls and stuff would cost, and the multiplayer side of things like the queuing system you'd have to pay in order to get into that. It is now just 99, I think it's just 99 a month now for the basic package basically. Yeah, 99 a month for the base rate. This allows you to have unlimited players. It covers, it's per title, so make sure that you select the right one if you've got multiple. And it basically allows you to do more with what you have. So if we look here at the starting, the prices basically, this used to be a lot different. Unless you guys are looking into, potentially thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of revenue being produced by your game, then stay away from the premium and enterprise plans because these things cost a lot of money. But if you're not, if you're just like me, 900 a month, that's great. You can create up to 10 titles. But basically what this means is you can have unlimited, whereas in the free one you can only have up to 100,000 users per title. If your game's getting past 100,000 users, you're probably doing pretty well anyway. But this one allows you to have unlimited live titles, as in live players, sorry. You can have unlimited live titles and player accounts here as well. Basically, this one here is a little bit confusing in the way it's worded. You can have 10 titles in development mode, so this means that they're not released, they're like dev mode, but you can have unlimited live, so games that are actually out there. Here in the free one, you can see that we've got limited free use of VM instant hours, virtual machine instant hours. Here you have included monthly meters valued at $400 US. Then go pay as you go. So you have a monthly $400 US worth of stuff like VM, virtual machines, and that sort of thing. This is pretty good. If you're working on dedicated servers, you're going to know what this is, and it's going to be handy for you. There is also gold support, so here you don't get any sort of support. Here you have access to the support ticket system through Playfab. So if you have problems, you can actually contact them, and they will, you can actually submit a ticket, and they will get back to you personally, rather than having to go onto their forums. You can submit a ticket straight to them. This automatically is worth the 99 a month. It's great, because just being able to talk to them if you have a problem is much better. You can split it down more a little bit into exactly what these cover. Now, this is the standard one that you look at here. So PlayStream events, you can have up to 20 million PlayStream events, and even then it's only $6 per additional million, and this is a month. So 20 million. You've probably got a hell of a lot of players, or a hell of a lot going in on your game if you're calling that many. There's reads and writes and storage. Look at this. You can even have 10 gigabytes of storage. That is to do with profiles, so the specific profiles that we've looked into. Content and configuration. Look at all these reads and writes you can have. Again, cloud script execution time. You can have 400,000 gigabytes a second done. Incredible amounts of these. But if you're paying the $99 a month, and your game has got plus 100,000 users or something, and it's starting to become popular, you're gonna want this. You're gonna need this, because otherwise your game will start running into it. If you're trying to keep it on the development side of things and keep it, say if you actually have got less than 100,000, but things are starting to pick up and quite rapidly, you're gonna want to move on to this. I think Playfab might automatically try and move you onto this as soon as it starts to get close anyway, and start prompting you saying, you're getting close. But if once the game is out there and it starts to do well, I would definitely recommend this. Being able to have 1 million executions of your cloud script is just crazy. And then look at this, like $0.2 per additional million executions. You can't really complain at that. It has everything, included insights. I mean, it's got an updated to party. Because Party's still kind of being worked on. Now, this is more to do with the voice and connectivity side of things, especially to do with Xbox Live. You can actually have things through Playfab for this. We touched into Party a little bit on the side, but it's not really something that you can script other than if you're doing Xbox stuff. So that if you're doing Xbox, this is great. Being able to have 1 million minutes on Party connectivity, or even 100,000 minutes on Party voice. That's pretty cool, Virtual machine, instant hours. Now, obviously, we touched into the servers on the last video. I'm not going to go too much into this, but as you can see, just having the 99 instantly allows you to be able to have things like the North Europe side of things, which is great, because by default you only have the US. So being able to automatically have one in Europe instantly puts you at a better advantage for players that are from Europe, rather than having to try to connect to an American server. And also as well, you can go to the detailed price sheet and have a look at all the server stuff. Now, there is a lot of information here. I'm not going to go into it because it is quite big, but it's not really something that I touch on personally. We also have here the network side of things, so the multiplayer servers, different zones, which is referred to in here. And the party side of things again. You also have support here for forums, support documentation, obviously, and a support ticket system, which is the one that's included for the 99. This is great. This one on the right hand here, this emergency escalation, this is for the top tier plan, the enterprise plan. Oh no, sorry, the premium plan, which is $2,000 a month. Probably wouldn't look into this unless you are making a hell of a lot of money a month, in which case you're probably not looking at these videos anyway, because you probably have somebody who knows this stuff like really, really well and is literally on top of it. And then there's more things like the add-ons sort of stuff. So it just says here, see add-on rates. What this basically means is you don't get a certain cut depending on, you don't get a reduction on the add-on cost depending on if you pay more. The add-ons are obviously other companies, they need to make money as well, so obviously they're not going to change. And then there's just some questions down here at the bottom that general ones that you can look into. So if we just go back now to these to the insight management that we were looking at, this basically lets you have a look at your performance and storage as it's happening, and then you can even increase it. You can increase stuff that's happening to look at what's actually going on. So you can see here all of this insight scheduled tasks and stuff that's going on. when you've got upgrades on, you can actually have a look at the trends and report stuff. This is basically just like a graph view of everything that's going on, so events wise and data wise, and it'll show you like what you've currently got selected and what your current usage of it is. Unless you pay for it, don't worry about it for now. If you do pay for it, then there's a lot of information, because obviously it's in preview. Don't go into it too much, but there is a bit of documentation on it, as we've just shown, to look at this sort of stuff. But again, it is really handy to be able to look at this and even go, okay, you know, it's lagging a little bit in, I don't know, the max events per second. Let's just increase this. There we go. Increase to 1,000 events per second. Awesome, great. Now it should be able to cope a little bit more. This sort of stuff is really handy. Just being able to update this on the fly to update your game is just so handy for sort of things. Obviously, with each one, you know, you can't put it up to the maximum and be like, sweet, awesome. It costs you credits per hour, and the credits obviously is worth proper money, so you know you will be billed for putting up this a little bit more. But obviously, you know, if you're even having to put this up, you're already paying the 99 a month anyway, and you're probably already doing well with the amount of users and stuff that you're getting through. So you know, it's probably not something that you need to look into too much. With the last one of these, because we've already been through all of these, the last two was Event History and Event Explorer. I'm just gonna show you the Event Explorer now. This is super powerful. Basically, what this is a way to be able to run your own data graphs in a way. There are a couple here, I think, that you can do sort of, you know, by default. Like, it gives you examples sort of thing. You can find out more information obviously by clicking on here. And it just goes through each of these, so it tells you a little bit more about what you can do, and then getting started with it, and to learn about roles of data and stuff, you can, you know, use it. That's more for like admins. But basically, what this allows you to do is query data. Is probably the simplest way I can do it. So if I put in, I don't know, count and render events by time. Let's have a look at this one. It just gives you an example here of this. So it has events all, so it's looking at all events. It's then looking at where the timestamp is less than 7 days ago. It's summarizing them by counting by timestamp per 4 hours, and then it's got the full name of the event, and then it's rendering it as bar chart. And then at the bottom here, it's actually displayed for us. So we can see here that we actually have entity logged in. There's obviously only one entity, me. And then it shows you how many times. So this is just a great way. Obviously, it doesn't have to be in graphs. You can create it as tables, which just show, like, which is the default, and it just shows you data. But it's a really handy way to be able to make custom data. So the dashboard reports only give you so much. If you're looking for very specific data points, you can probably find a way to be able to get it in here by going into the events and actually, you know, looking for calls of that update, and then being able to do it that way. So you can actually start creating your own data that you can, you know, you can come in here, you can save it out, because you can actually file and export as CSV, or if you've got something good, or you can just save the file, and then when you next come in, you can just open it, run the file, get all the data for the last 7 days, and then export it out, and then obviously hand it over to your data analyst, or even just create this for your data analysis guy in order to be able to run if they're looking for more specific data. But this is just a really handy way of being able to do it. It also has all of your projects on the side here, and you know, you can automatically come in here and see what's classed under the events all. Now, it doesn't look like much, but you can pretty much look at all the data that is being called through CloudScript or updated. You know, you can go into specific entities like players and stuff and actually look at their specific statistic and all that. This isn't something that I do a lot, simply because it's a very unique way of coding, in the sense that it's, you know, it's not C++ or anything like that. It's like its own little thing, and this isn't something as well that I've had to use, because the last couple of projects I've worked on, unfortunately, I've had to leave before the title got to the point where this sort of stuff would actually become useful, because obviously it's still in development and not released. But once your game is released, this is probably something that you and whoever is doing your analytics for your game, this is probably something that you guys want to look into, to be able to read some more specific data. It's great and all having access to the things like the spenders and the retention and new users, logins, all that sort of stuff. But if you're looking for more specific things, then you probably want to jump into here and actually have a look at what's happening, rather than what's actually just the spenders and stuff. So you can see here that we've actually just done one dead quick, and all this one does is top events by account. So you can see here the entity login, the player logged in, published cloud scripts, like player stats changed, title news updated, title added, well, that's a cloud script for it anyway. Player started purchase, all this sort of stuff, and then you can then come into here in your examples and actually just put these as the event that's happening, and you can start to go into more detailed. So you can look at the event for let's see, cloud script on title published cloud script maybe, or no, player executed cloud script. So you could put this one in as what you're looking for inside of the event. So like here where full name equals, and then put in the cloud script one. Then that'll show you all the events where the cloud script happened, and then you could probably go into even more detail of looking at a specific cloud script and then looking for data returned. You can just go into this in a lot more depth. It is currently in preview simply because it is quite new. So give Playfab chance. It isn't perfect just yet. The system, it is pretty damn powerful, but it isn't perfect yet. And just play around with it. If you want to play around with it before you release your game, just do that. It doesn't do anything, but it just allows you to get used to the system a little bit more. And when the time comes where you guys are going to need this, when your game's released, you hopefully have a better understanding of it than myself, just simply because you've played around with it a bit. And then obviously you'll be able to then get much more detailed reports because you'll be able to run much more detailed searches. So the last thing is event history. So event history is probably the one that you guys are going to use the most, and the one that we're probably going to talk about quite a lot. So in here, it shows you the event data retention for 30 days. And what I mean by this is that it shows you all of this. It shows you all of that data that we just saw inside the Explorer, the event, like all the event calls. It shows you all of this, and instead of just showing you in graph form, which it does as well for some reason, it also shows you every single call below here in massive amounts of detail. So say where we updated the kill amount for a script that we did a while back, you can come in here and click show JSON, and you can have a look right into the detail of this cloud script. So you can have a look at the Playfab environment. So where was it called from? Obviously, most of these are probably going to stay the same throughout all of them. So things like com.playfab, that's probably going to stay the same. Things that you're most likely looking for are things here, like cloud script execution results. So, what function did it call? What was the processing time? What was the revision that it was called on, in case it's called on a other revision other than latest. Logs, what logs were recorded. There is also a return. There should be a return if it only does stuff that is actually given data for. So if there's a return function in there that returns a little bit of data, it will actually have return, and it will be set up the same way as logs, so you can read it. It also gives you, who called it, what source of it, the title ID, if you've got multiple titles. So, you can actually jump into here and have a look at a lot more stuff than it gives you credit for. Now, you do also have access to this sort of stuff. So like the Playfab login from Steam, and it actually, like the country, the continent, sorry, EU, country code, longitude, latitude. It gives you the city that's nearest to it, the platform, the IP address of the player, the platform's name. This sort of stuff is stuff that you need to make sure that you don't really spread to anyone, because this is player data, and in order to access this, you probably need to make sure that you have some sort of I wouldn't say contract, but some sort of player data contract, or EULA is what they're most likely done through nowadays. A user end license agreement that pops up when the first time they load the game and says, do you accept all of this? And inside of there, it tells you that it's gonna, grab your data through Steam and all this sort of stuff. You probably want to have this sort of stuff set up ready for when the game launches, not for when you guys are deving it. I mean, it's great to have, the earlier the better, but you're getting access to a load of players' data, especially when you're linking through things. I mean, Steam isn't that bad because Steam is on a PC. Sure, you get their IP address, but you know, it's only Steam. If you're getting access through somebody's mobile, like an iPhone or an Android, you need this. You need to have some sort of EULA in place. I don't even know if Apple or Android even let you put it up on the store without having one. Steam does, but I don't know if the phones do, because obviously there's a lot more personal data on there, and you want to, you know, the player needs to make sure that it's safe. And you need to make sure the player gives you permission to read the data. Obviously, if the player denies giving you data, you can't do any of this stuff. They probably, you know, you'll probably have some sort of way of saying that the game closes then afterwards if they don't give permission, because obviously it needs it in order to run. But you know, you have access to all of this, so make sure that if you're going to hook up Playfab, and you're going to start reading user data, like the username, like the platform username, and you also get things like their IP address and where they live, you probably want to make sure that you're looking into, or at least thinking about, some sort of EULA. But we're going to ignore that for now, just simply because it's only me on here. You know, there's only me on this. So we're just going to jump into some of the others. So it literally gives you an exact history of everything that's happened over the last 30 days. You know, and if you've got a lot of players on here, this can be a hell of a lot of data, and this chart will be massive. But then it's not only just that, and you have to search for it manually. You can also start making searches yourself. So you can actually come into here and say, you know, oh, I want to see when the title catalog was updated, and then search for that, and then it will just bring up those events for you to look at, and how many times it was called, and all this sort of stuff. And you can even start to, I mean, the Explorer is kind of like an extension of the history in a better way, that you can actually look more detailed into it and create other graphs from it and stuff. But this is pretty much the same. You know, you can start to put in things like here, so like where timestamp, you know, and date, time, and full name, and all this sort of stuff. Obviously, some things are automatically done through this anyway. But, you know, this is, you guys need to learn how to use this. Just start playing around in it, because when your game is released and you start to, I wouldn't say make money, but when players start to get into your game, you need to know what's happening on your data side of things. You need to see what's happening, what events are being called, what data's happening. You know, give it to give it to one of your team that's going to look over this data and go, okay, where are we succeeding? Where are things going wrong? Especially if there's things like errors popping up. You know, you want to make sure that you don't have any errors popping up in your game. If there are any errors, find out why there are errors. What can we do to make this better? What can we do to fix this? If there's anything, again, like an example, like in the store that's not selling, why is it not selling? Is there anything we can do to fix this? What can we do to make this better? This is all something that Playfab within this tab here just allows you to do, and you guys should just go in, just jump into it. Jump in after you've, you know, at least got this sort of stuff set up, the basics, so that there's some data there for you to play with. Just start playing around with it, seeing what data you can get up, because it's pretty powerful. You can start to get up a hell of a lot of data on here. And then start just messing around with it. Start seeing what graphs you can get. Start messing around with the dates that it's looking between and all this sort of stuff. You can look, I think you can look actually, I don't know, you know, you used to be able to, but you can't anymore. They must have fixed that. But before, you used to be, you know, there was a weird way to be able to get it past 30 days. So it is 30 days that you can look at. So make sure that you're looking at it, you know. You can even start saving your searches here, and then just simply, instead of having to each time set up the exact same search, just drop down, select, boom, there it is, instant. And then you can have a look at exactly what's going on. You know, this is the sort of thing that you guys will use further down the line. So it's something that you guys need to look into. Now, the last thing that I said that we were going to look into, just in a little bit more detail, is the experiments. So what we're going to do, obviously you can read the quick starter up here. You know, it's just basic tutorials. It goes over what they do and that sort of stuff. But we're just going to jump in and create a new experiment, and we're just going to call it something like test experiment. Help if I could spell. There we go. And then, I don't know, description, we're just going to put test. Both of them are required. Now, this here is the start date and end date of your experiment. Don't make them too long. Most experiments probably run for, depending on what it is, anywhere between 30 and 90 days. It all depends on what you're testing, Basically, if you need a long period of time to test something, if it's really, really detailed and really, really important, just make sure you give it enough time. Don't give something that's super important to your game like 30 days, because it might not work properly, especially at the very beginning of your game. It just might not work because you might not have the audience. You need that time in order to gather more audience. It just depends on what you're testing. Audience wise, so this is run across all title players or select player segment, and what it means by this is only run this experiment on, I don't know, payers. So only run this experiment on people who have previously bought something in the game. Only run this on players who have been active within the last 2 weeks. You know, this sort of stuff. Most of the time you probably want to run it across all of it, because otherwise it can get a little bit confusing. And then finally, we come to the variance. Now, the control variant, this is the base value. So what it is currently, or what the what the base of it should be. You probably want to keep this as A, B, C, D, E, or just use the alphabet. If you're going longer than 26, help, because that's a hell of a lot of experiment data to be running. Probably shouldn't doing that. Most of the time, you probably only want to run a maximum of like 5 or 6. But variant name, you probably want to keep the same. And the percentage of the target audience. Now, you probably want to split this equally. So, I think it might automatically do it for us. No, it looks like it did with the 50-50. But you probably want to keep it as it is, sort of thing. So, you want to make sure that everything is split perfectly between the targets. So if you've got 3, 33.3%. If you've got 4, 25%. If you've got 5, 20%. Make sure that it's sort of split perfectly. I mean, you can put more into one or the other. However, then that might cause problems with the results that you get, because obviously one has more samples than the other, simply because it has more target audience than the other. So you probably want to keep it the same. You can easily just add in another one as well at the bottom here. You can just add treatment variable, a variant, sorry, and then you can just put it in. For now, I'm just going to leave it as the 2, just so that we can look into it a bit more. Now, with each one, you can describe your variant, and you probably want to do so to give it a little bit more details for yourself. But it's more back end, so make sure that you just give it a good description so that you know what it's testing. The control variables, now this is the variable name that you put in and the variable value, and the control overrides. Now this is just going to be title data. Basically, you want to make sure that anything that you set up for A/B testing is done in here. So overrides, yada yada yada. The overrides come into effect using config-based experiments. So again, this is set up here, and you need to make sure that you have an override done in here. But basically, you want to just make sure that all of this is set up. Give it a variable name with the whatever the value is that you want to test, and then again for the second one, and then the override is probably always going to be title data. Now, because we haven't set up an override value in here, it can't actually find one. But once you set one up, you can then it'll be in the drop down again like before, and then you just simply select it, and that's the one that it'll override. Basically, that's the one that it'll go, okay, you'll get the data, and inside of Playfab it'll go, is there an experiment running? Yes. What group's this player in? It's in this one. Sweet. Here's the overridden value that this player needs to use, and it'll all be handled for you. So you can also schedule them if you want to schedule the one in the future, maybe, and you can run it now, or you can just save it as a draft. Obviously, this one's got errors because it has literally 0 in it, because obviously we haven't done anything with it. Now, once scheduled or once set up, it looks like this. So you can see here that this one's going until the November 1st. It's only got 2 variants, and you can also see how many players. There's currently number of players that have been assigned to the experiment in the last 8 hours. So basically, this will just show you, if it's working or not. If it's 0, something's wrong. If it's whatever amount of users, then obviously it's been set up properly and it's running. You can click on it in order to go into a little bit more details. However, there isn't really too much that you can actually see inside of here. You can go into this and change some of the stuff a little bit more, but once it's in progress, you probably want to make sure and leave it alone, simply because you could seriously break some stuff if you set this up and then change it once it's already running. Unless something, I'm not saying you can't do it, unless something really goes wrong, and I mean really, really goes wrong, don't touch the experiment once it's running. Now, once it's done, it should simply just get put to complete, and then incomplete, it should then just show you what the win was. It's a bit hard to test when I haven't actually got anyone to test it with, because obviously even my player aren't called the type of things properly, because obviously it's sort of like a bodged in way of doing it because the game doesn't really exist, and I'm using Playfab for a title that was discontinued that I was part of. So it's kind of like hit and miss. It's not perfect, which is why I can't do some of the calls like through Steam in order to purchase stuff. But once it's done, it'll go to completed, and it will show you what the winner was, and then you should just simply be able to set the winner. You can also come into here and have exclusions. So exclusion groups prevent players from seeing multiple experiments. This is getting into more of like the top end of thing, but you can actually start to exclude things from within the experiment if you want to test it, if you want to narrow it down a little bit more to certain things. You can see here that it's running now for some reason. I don't know why it's running, because obviously there's nobody going to be in it. And I can stop it. Yeah, obviously it says there that you can't undo it once it's stopped. That isn't news to anyone, or at least it shouldn't be. But then when now that it's completed, it's in here, which is good because we can actually have a look at it, and then it should show you the scorecard once it's been generated. So it'll show you the data of which ones did which, and then basically all you need to do then is just go in and make sure that everything is overridden to that value that won, basically. I'm pretty sure that once it's done, all you need to do is go into the title data and set up a new primary title data and put it in there as just the base one with the new value that you tested. It might set it up so that it automatically does this anyway whenever it's complete and you decide a winner for it. However, again, without being able to test this properly, because it only has because of the way I'm doing this, it's a little bit more difficult to show you guys what happens when it's finished, unless there's something here, which I don't think there is. It shouldn't be too hard though. I mean, this sort of thing is pretty handy, being able to test stuff as and when you need it, and then once completed, being able to look at it. So you can see here that this one shows the scoreboard a little bit better. Shows you the player count, the average, the statistics, significance. What they're on. Are they on the baseline, or are they on the one of the others that you're testing against? And then once completed, you can also see the scoreboard again, and it basically shows you how well it's done. And then it will probably be in here somewhere, but it will actually show you how to set it back, or how to set the default value to what you need. Now, this is still pretty new to Playfab. All the experiment side of stuff. This is new. It used to be under automation, under A/B testing, and they changed it to experiments. This is new stuff, so there might be a glitch or two in the system. There probably aren't a lot of people who have fully used this to its capability yet, because it hasn't been around long. I myself haven't really used this, mainly because obviously, as I said earlier, it's more for mobile side of things, and I concentrate more on the PC and console side of things. But there will be help out there, and obviously if you as well pay the $99 a month in order to upgrade to unlimited users and that sort of thing, you have a support ticket system for you to use. So make sure you use it for the new things they add. They're always adding new things into Playfab all the time, so you need to make sure that you keep on top of them. But then when something does come up like this, when you're looking into experiments, ask them. If you're stuck, ask Playfab. Just send them a ticket and say, You know, have you got any advice for me on how to use this? And if you're still on the development one, like this one's on, where you only have a maximum of 100,000 users, get on the forums. You know, just ask people, because this system is new. Hopefully, there's a few people just messing around with it, and I really wish I had the time to be able to get into this and mess around with it and show you it working a little bit better. But this is just a basic tutorial series going over how to use Playfab and the basics of it. When like experiments is like a high end, after you've got your game out type of deal. You know, this isn't something you do during the development, which is what this series was made for. This series was made for setting everything up, you know, getting you guys into the flow of getting the system set up, getting Playfab hooked up with your game, getting basic cloud scripts and basic data done. This experiments and all the data that we've looked at today, this is after the game has already been released, that you guys need to be looking into this stuff. You know, you're not going to be looking into experiments whilst your game is still in dev, because there's nothing to test, because you guys can just plug it straight into the engine. You know, or you can just get your testers to test it with different values depending on, you know, how you've got your game set up. Or the data side of things, there isn't going to be any data there other than just you guys developing the game, or the testers. You know, you can't test anything properly, and you certainly can't run experiments because it's all bodged data, because it's just made up of devs and QA testers or beta testers. You know, you can't trust that information because obviously they've been on the game for so long, it isn't going to read right. So this sort of stuff needs to be done once the game is done, once the game is out there, once you've released it. You've gone, awesome, we've created our game, now let's look into how we can make it better. That's where this sort of stuff starts to come in. And unfortunately, because obviously the project that we've been doing, and the series being a basic one, we can't do that. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and create a massive game for mobile just so that we can test this experiment side of the system and the data side of things. But it is possible. Playfab offers this to us already, which is fantastic. And a lot of things don't, like, you know, yeah, sure, you might be able to hook up player data somewhere else, say into AWS, but, you know, just having all of this just on one site in Playfab, being able to jump from CloudScript to multiplayer queues and servers to your title data to experiments and dashboards and, you know, all the data that's coming from your game all in one place is fantastic. So, you know, I think that pretty much brings it to this series to an end of the stuff that we were looking at. You know, the basic setup. We've gone through the basics of Playfab. We've gone through statistics and leaderboards, player data, title data, the cloud scripts, automation and rules, stores with inventories and virtual currencies. We've even looked into matchmaking with servers. Not so much in detail, but, you know, still matchmaking nonetheless, and look into the actual server setups. We've done news and notifications and accounts. We've looked into the data and dashboards and experiments today. We've even looked into some of the newer things like rewards and ads that they do. Obviously, mobile only. Duh, it's ads. Steam doesn't allow ads. But, you know, we've gone over everything that I wanted to make sure that we went over through Playfab. The only things that we haven't done is look into extra add-ons. Now, the other add-ons that are in here, guys, are things that you guys, other than platforms, you guys probably aren't going to want to either A, touch, or B, use, depending on your game. You know, you can have a look at simpler analytics, but it probably costs. Photon does cost. It is a powerful plugin, don't get me wrong. Photon is used for a lot of mobile games for cloud-based multiplayer and chat, but it does cost a lot of money. Yeah, if you guys are going to set this up, then Playfab, like, you know, Playfab tutorial series like this isn't the place to look for it. You want to look on Photon. You want to contact people who have used Photon, or a Photon forum. There might be one out there. You know, nobody on Playfab, unless you get the couple of people, like Playfab themselves aren't going to know what they do with Photon other than the way that they set it up, because it's a third-party app. You know, Photon is created by another team. It's not created by Playfab. It's created by another team, and they're going to want to use it. There's Amazon, you know, distributor for Kindle. Probably not for most of us. PayPal, if you want to hook up PayPal or Xola into your payment systems. You know, depending on your platform, you might not even be able to do this. So, like Steam and mobile, obviously with all the controversy that's going currently on with mobile, but with Steam as well, they make you use their platform. You can't pay via PayPal or Xola. So, you know, this is more for things like Facebook games. or if you've got like a custom platform for your game, then this is stuff that you could look into for that. There's advertising if you want to keep back of mobile attribution tracking. You know, again, mobile specific. If you want to have source control for cloud scripting, GitHub, this one's really handy though. If you've got a big team, this one's quite good. You probably want to have this one enabled. It should be pretty simple to set up, but it could be pretty good to just have it as a source control rather than cloud scripts just save all sort of function. SMTP. Now this is the ability to send emails. This isn't really useful for Steam games, but for mobile games, you probably want to look into this. Community side of things, block profanity in display names. So these guys, like Community Sift, will actually go through display names of your players if you set up the account side of things properly, and check out the display names to make sure that there's not profanity in anything of them. However, it does cost quite a bit of money. It is good. Don't get me wrong. You get so many free as well. You get 500 free for your first month. But if you want to have, like, if you've got a butt ton of players, like, up to 100,000, which is what Playfab can support, it's going to cost you another 100 a month just in order to do the name checks. So, just having some systems in place by you guys in the engine to stop people from putting profanity in, that'll already cut that down massively already. You can look at community tools to engage and retain players. And there's also a new one here for game monetization and game consulting through Adrian Cook. These are all things that you guys can look into via the add-ons, but it's things that Playfab themselves, other than simply hooking up, won't actually be able to help you with much, because it's they're other companies. They're just able to access through Playfab. That's all. So if you guys want to look into some of these other add-ons, great. Get out there, go have a look at them. Some of them are fantastic, but Playfab aren't going to be able to help you much with them, and neither is this tutorial series or any other Playfab tutorial series, unless they're specifically looking into a mobile game and they're doing it from start to finish and they're hooking up Photon, which I don't think there is any out there for it. But if you instead just type in Photon, there's probably a lot of tutorial series out there that will focus purely on the Photon side of things. And then once you have that working, you can then start hooking it up with Playfab, and it works pretty well. So, you can, all of this is already available to you. You guys just need to be able to do it. But I think that actually brings the end of our basic tutorial series to an end, really. We've gone through everything on setting up a basic Playfab system. Now, there are some more advanced things that we could get into, like we could look into the advanced cloud scripts, or we could look into some of the usings that we haven't gone through, like groups and stuff, which I might do like an additional episode on, for like, what an advanced cloud script is and some of the things like groups and stuff. However, I have found myself with a very short amount of time to do these videos, and it's getting shorter and shorter due to other personal reasons. So, I've just created this basic tutorial series just to give you guys a head start, be able to go, okay, I want, like, you're a new developer, you want to use Playfab, sweet, Unreal Engine Playfab, there's the tutorial series. It'll show you the basics of getting all of this together, and then, once you've got the basics and you've got the stuff working, great, just carry on as you're going and learn as you go. But I might not be around to help much, just simply because, I have a busy life as well. I've got a full-time job, I've got a family, there's a lot going on. I have attached my Discord name to the bottom of all my videos, and I will also attach it to the bottom of this one, in case you guys need to chat about anything. But I am on Discord quite a bit. I do appear as offline quite a lot as well. That's just purely because I'm usually working. But I am available to ask questions if you guys need help with anything. Obviously, I'm not going to sit down and go through step by step on how to create an entire game with you guys. But if you need just a little bit of help in order to get something working on the Playfab side of things, or you've done it exactly the same as the tutorial showed, and other people have said it's working, but for some reason yours isn't, I'll sit down with you and debug through it. I've already gone through a couple of people's where some strange things has been happening. The newest version of Unreal Engine 4.25.3, for some reason the standalone option of running your game no longer runs with Steam. It doesn't make the Steam pop-up run. You need to launch the game like through different means in order to get this to happen. It took us a while to figure this out, but now that we've figured it out, anyone else that asks, I can just tell them. So if you guys need any help, don't feel afraid to actually ask me about anything on Discord, and it'll be in the description of this video. But probably for the final time, I think that brings us to the end of our video. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video as much as I have enjoyed making them. And I'll see you guys again soon. Bye!